Welcome back to the latest episode of Best Pod Available. Joe DeLeone and Ryan Roberts. We're here to dig into some of the key discussions about the 2026 NFL Draft. If you haven't done so, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our latest episodes dropping typically on Mondays. Ryan, let's start. We got to jump in on this quarterback class situation. We talked about at the beginning of the week, Dante Moore declaring or deciding not to declare for the upcoming draft. Right now, it looks like this quarterback class is quite bad. A lot of guys went back to school because they had opportunities to make more money in college, and they also wanted the security as well as the opportunity to develop for better opportunities in 2027. Who knows what the 2027 class is going to look like, but without Dante Moore and with just seemingly Fernando Mendoza, Ty Simpson, and possibly Trinidad Chambliss, this class isn't great. Where do you stand on this class, and who do you think ultimately is going to rise?
Well, where I stand with this class, Joe, is you should have listened to me about the Dante Moore stuff. That's first and foremost. You should have listened about the potential of him going back to college. I'm sorry, I had to throw that in there real quick. This quarterback class is horrible. Like, it's bad. Because you know how I am, Joe. You know how I am. I like Fernando Mendoza. I don't love Fernando Mendoza just in general. So, like, starting at the top, I'm like, I don't think this is a traditional kid that you want to draft number one overall. I mean, that's just kind of where my mind goes to. After that, I wouldn't take Ty Simpson or Trinidad Chambliss right now in the first round. Like, I would not do that. Would I be okay with investing a day two capital into Trinidad Chambliss in the right situation? Possibly. I think that's an interesting just kind of value play there. But also, we don't know if Trinidad Chambliss is definitely going to be in this class either right now because he's trying to get the appeal for the additional year of eligibility. So if Trinidad Chambliss isn't in this class, then what are we doing here, Joe? I mean, what are we doing here? I'm not in on Ty Simpson. I think Ty Simpson will still go in the first round, but I'm not in on him. Are we going to talk ourselves into Garrett Nussmeier in the top 100? Are we going to talk ourselves into the resurrection of Drew Allar at some point in this class? Like, what are we doing right now? This is one of the least exciting quarterback classes that I can remember, and I once covered. What was it, the 2024? Which was the bad one? 23? Was it 20? I can't remember which one it was. But either way, there was one, the Malik Willis draft, whenever that was. That was a bad. Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, like that was a bad quarterback class. This class is just about as bad. Fernando Mendoza is better than anybody in that class, obviously. But like outside of that, the depth in this class stinks. It's really bad.
Yeah, and I strongly disagree with you on Fernando Mendoza. We already had that discussion. I think that he is a guy who would typically be worthy of a high pick, but because of the lack of star names here, you have to go with the best player if you're the one team that controls the outcome for where the quarterbacks end up going. So if you're the Raiders, he's the only viable option. You need somebody to reset your franchise. You haven't been able to find somebody in some time. Don't wait any longer. The first part that I want to address with this is how high does Ty Simpson now realistically go? Without Dante Moore, a guy who probably would have been middle to the back end of the first round for a team like the Steelers, does somebody talk themselves into him in the top 10? I mean, we were possibly doing that last year with not very many good options. You heard the possibility of Tyler Shuck going a lot earlier than expected. Shedeur Sanders was getting projected very highly. Jackson Dart was rumored to be possibly a top 10 pick. He still ended up going the first round. So does Simpson have enough, and does the outcome end up becoming that he goes in the top 10 of this draft because the top 10 has so many teams that need quarterbacks?
Right. I think just kind of backtracking to Mendoza for a second, Joe, I'm okay with the Raiders investing in this class at the top because it's not a great just overall top of the class. So I'm fine with Mendoza at the top in this year's class specifically. When it comes to Simpson, I mean, Joe, he's definitely going to go. Where do the Steelers pick? They're like 20 or 21 or something like that, right? Like somewhere in that ballpark. He's not going to get past them, right? So like he's going to be a top 20 NFL draft selection in this class, like because there's going to be desperation to your point, right? It's like, what does Cleveland do? What do the Jets do? What do the Steelers do? Like, there's enough quarterback needy teams that he's going to go very high. He said, according to his camp, that they got mostly first-round feedback from the NFL. I think his dad actually said that he got nothing but first-round feedback from the NFL. And I talked to a couple people.
The article that was written by Chris Lowe included that 17 of the 18 teams that gave him feedback gave him first round feedback, and the one that did not say first round said that he could interview his way into the first round. So it was basically all clear, positive feedback from the league.
And to validate that, I haven't talked to 18 different teams about Ty Simpson, but I've talked to a couple scouts about Ty Simpson, and it does sound like the NFL is a lot higher on him than maybe some media members are at this point. So I think he's definitely going in the first round. I think he is a pretty much almost locked to be a top 20 pick, and I would not be shocked if he ends up going in the top 10. Cleveland at 6 feels like a Cleveland Browns pick, man. Like, it just does. I don't love it, but we'll have to wait to see who the next head coach is and all those types of factors that are going to go into this conversation. But yeah, man, I think he's going to go a lot higher than he should in the 2026 class, just based upon demand and the fact that the NFL likes Ty Simpson to a decent degree.
You know where would actually be interesting for Simpson to land? So first of all, I agree with you. It does feel like something that the Browns would do would be overdrafting a quarterback just because they feel like they have to take a quarterback. That is not an infrastructure that I think sets up for success on either end. The other teams to monitor, does Arizona talk themselves into it at 3? Do the Jets get incredibly bullish and go with them at 2? That might be a little bit rich. One team, though, that I believe is quite interesting to pay attention to what they do this offseason is the Miami Dolphins at 11. I understand that they have Tua, but one thing that a lot of people have continuously brought up, they've compared it to the Russell Wilson circumstance where giant, ugly contract, get rid of it. Just completely get rid of that contract and move on from him, eat the dead money, and draft a rookie. If you're sitting there at 11, it's very similar possibly to the whole Bo Nix situation. It all comes down to who do they hire as their next head coach. If they had hired Harbaugh, it would have almost been a parallel circumstance of veteran coach who's finding his guy and all that crap, but that's not what came to fruition. I wonder if maybe we get an offensive-minded coach that really likes Ty Simpson that says, get Tua the hell out of here. We're going to go all in on drafting Ty Simpson, and we're just going to stink for this first year, and we'll see how competitive we can be. And 2027 will be the year that they try to fight to be a playoff team.
Well, and as we're sitting here, and it's possible that a coaching hire or two has happened since recording this, but we're sitting here with just one new head coach in the building in John Harbaugh, right? So, we're talking about a Miami team that doesn't have a head coach right now, doesn't have an offensive coordinator, obviously. We're talking about the Cleveland Browns, who are in the same situation. So many teams have yet to fill their coaching vacancy, so it's hard to say, that team's going to be in the market for a quarterback. You have no idea who the head coach is, what their philosophy is, who the offensive coordinator is. So many variables are about to happen. But that being said, I think he's going to go high, and I do think that Tua Tagovailoa's days in Miami are done at this point, because from things that I've heard, Joe, I don't think that benching would have happened last year if it was Mike McDaniel's call. I think that was a call from the higher-ups to make that benching happen. So I think that Miami as an organization, just in general from the top, is done with Tua. That's what it seems like at this point. So pick at 11, if Ty Simpson's staring you in the face. Here's the question. Here's the actual weird question, okay? So we talked about Cleveland at 6. Cleveland at 6. Does the demand for Ty Simpson get so much, Joe, that a Miami Dolphin says, hey, we got to jump up to 5 to make sure we get our guy, Ty Simpson, that the Cleveland Browns don't take him? Could there be demand for a player like Ty Simpson? I don't think it's crazy, even though it sounds crazy when I say it. Yeah.
I think that there's going to be, because Simpson, it's not like Simpson physically, this isn't a Kenny Pickett type of a guy who the market's going to build up for him. Pickett didn't really have the tools to be a first-round starting quarterback in the NFL, but desperation created the market for him. Simpson has the tape of a first-round player. The problem was that at the end of the year, the team around him was so bad that it made him look worse than I think that he actually was. And then there's the lack of starts that impacts his draft stock. We'll see what happens here. I think there's 3 guys that I want to throw out there that I think could end up being risers out of pure desperation. Not players who go in the first round, but ultimately go earlier than everybody anticipates. One, and this show is going to be published before the national championship. I think that Carson Beck could do a lot for himself if he plays solidly in the national championship. Not saying as a first rounder, so don't shake your head at me. But maybe a team that has typically banged up veteran, whatever it is, just says, you know what, we'll take him the beginning of the third round, and he'll be our guy that maybe he ends up being a starter at some point, or he's just a really reliable backup. He's played a lot of football. Maybe that ends up being the case. Again, we say this all the time. NFL teams are stupid when it comes to this guy delivered a really good game when I was watching it.
He's a winner.
A really big moment. Right, exactly. It ends up being delivered that way. But Beck obviously just requisite traits, the elbow thing, his arm strength is just not really, really there. Two guys that are freakish athletes that I wonder if one of them does something on the stops along the way, either their all-star game or the NFL Combine, a really good testing performance, Taylon Green or Cole Payton, Taylon Green from Arkansas or Cole Payton from North Dakota State. Cole Payton is Taysom Hill, man. He's a battering ram. Taylon Green is like Joe Milton, but faster, maybe. There is
worse arm.
A possibility for someone to talk themselves into one of these guys and taking them way higher, maybe at the end of day 2. I'm just throwing it out there. If there's some random chaotic nonsense, one of those two guys are going to be that chaotic nonsense.
You know what's annoying is when you initially said it, I'm just like, dude, stop. Like, what are we doing? But like, the more I just kind of
I'm not the one saying it, though.
No.
Let's be
clear.
I've seen people tweeting this, but seriously, but taking it seriously.
You didn't let me get to the compliment for a second.
Okay. Go ahead.
The more I sat there, I'm like, he's probably right. He's probably right. We see this happen.
This happens every year.
It does. Well, most cases. Outside of like that Kenny Pickett year, I don't think people really reached for quarterbacks in that class. But to your point, yes, it happens a lot. There's no doubt about it. Cole Payton, like, if you want to bet on some athleticism, I guess. Like, Carson Beck does feel like the guy that's going to get overdrafted because he's the tall, you-know-what winner. Like, that's what he is, man. He's tall and he wins. Like, that's just all he does, right? Oh, God. So I can see him. You know who it is, though, Joe? The guy that's still going to get drafted higher than people are going to project him right now, and I stand by this, it's going to be Garrett Nussmeier. Like, in my opinion, it's going to be Garrett Nussmeier. Even though Nussmeier doesn't have a big frame, so he doesn't, like, fit the, like, big winner thing or whatever, he still has, comparatively to a lot of players in this class, and I'm talking about, like, Carson Beck, he still has a ton more arm talent than, like, what Carson Beck has right now. And he has the NFL bloodlines, and he has had moments, or I shouldn't say NFL bloodlines, he is the coach's son, or like coach's son's family, all that type of stuff, right? But I say all that to say he has also had some moments, and it's not been a lot, and that's why I'm not high on Garrett Nussmeier, but he has had moments over the last 2 years of games, drives, sequences where you're like, okay, I can work with that. So I am not advocating for him being a top 64 selection, but if Garrett Nussmeier went in the top 64, would I be shocked if he cleared medicals and he interviewed well? Would I be shocked? Absolutely not. Like, he's got some of that clichéness to him that in a bad quarterback class could rise, in my opinion.
All right, let's move on to talking about some of these specific prospects. David Bailey is a really awesome story in the upcoming draft. Dude is an unbelievable player. He transferred to Texas Tech from Stanford. His production went through the roof. You saw the jump that everybody was asking for. With a solid edge class, Ryan, do you believe that David Bailey is edge 1?
No, I don't think he's edge 1, but I do think he can be drafted as edge 1. Joe, I think that we need to come forth with this reality that there is a very decent chance, if David Bailey has a good draft process, that he could be the top pass rusher off the board. He could be the first edge off the board, absolutely. Because when I look at Ruben Bain, I think Ruben Bain has some limitations as a pass rusher, which is why I do think there's going to be a lot of debate about Ruben Bain positionally and upside-wise. There's going to be a vast opinions on Ruben Bain. Keldrick Falk's going to bring a lot of opinions too, because while Keldrick Falk has the more prototype and has the higher upside comparative to even what a Bain has, he didn't have a productive year this past year, so you're going to question, like, what exactly can he do as a floor? Like, what can he bring? Absolutely. Is he Miles Murphy, or is he someone else, right? Like, that's the question. So you have to kind of work through that in your minds. David Bailey, though, he's the easy pass rusher in the NFL level, in my opinion. Like, he's explosive, he's long, he's been productive this past year. I do think that the power profile is developing as well. Will never be a plus run defender, which is going to make him lower on some boards. But in terms of pure pass rushers, he could go very, very high.
Yeah, I'm going to be frank with you. David Bailey, to me, is edge one. I think that you just laid out a really good picture here, and here's the conclusion to the picture that you just laid out. Brian, I think that the biggest part with this is that for the questions that come with Keldrick Falk, the questions that come with Ruben Bain, David Bailey, to me, actually sets up a picture for a prospect that I think is ready to go. He was really productive this past year. He's got the tools. He's got the traits. Does he need a little bit more refinement in his hand usage? Yes. But the leap that I saw from the 2024 version where he was awkward and didn't really know how to play the position, and now there's a lot more nuance and attention to detail for him to win, I think all of that presents a really promising player that the production translates to the NFL. The one thing that blows me away with David Bailey, it's the speed, it's the acceleration, and he's got some underrated power that there's times on film where he's overpowering offensive linemen and using his length as a way to win. He's also zipping past guys that can't keep up with him. I think that David Bailey is the more easily projectable player. Can Ruben Bain be really, really disruptive in an interior spot? Absolutely. I think that's where he fits. He's much more powerful than David Bailey. Does Keldrick Falk have upside because of his length? 100%. But I think that with David Bailey here, he checks all the boxes that I feel like I'm the least concerned and I'm the least conflicted.
So, and here's another thing too, is we always talk about the pre-draft process and guys taking a step forward, right? Is Ruben Bain going to test that well? Probably not, right? Like, I don't think Ruben Bain's going to test overly well.
I feel like his explosion stuff would probably be pretty good. I feel like he's going to be a big jumper. I don't know about can't speak to how well I think he feels like one of those guys that could end up testing way better than anyone's anticipating. Bailey's going to test well. This is my point.
Well, that's my point too. That's my point is that, like, I think Keldrick Falk will test solidly, like, good for his size. Like, he'll be like probably a better version of like Greg Rousseau as a tester. Like, he'll run better than you think. He's going to jump a little bit better than you think. He's going to move around a little better than you think. But nothing's going to be elite, in my opinion, from just a pure testing perspective. David Bailey might jump like 39 plus inches in the verts, and he might jump like well over 10 feet in the broad. Like, he's that type of explosive athlete. So yeah, I think he has the best opportunity to ascend during the pre-draft process. And I think the one big thing here too, Joe, is that at Stanford, he was like a pure designated pass rusher. Like, that was all he was. He didn't play against the run basically at all. While I don't think he's ever going to be a plus run defender, the fact that at Texas Tech they just let him play and let him learn and let him develop, I think that's big for him too, because at least he shows that, hey, at least I can hold the edge at times, right? Like, I'm not going to be a horrible run defender. I think he'll just be kind of like an average one at best, but I do think that those reps mattered for him this year.
Yeah, I think it definitely comes down to me that I was impressed. I like Ruben Bain, I think, more than you do. I wasn't particularly blown away from Keldrick Falk because I think when you're evaluating a prospect and it ends up becoming a little bit too much projection and it's a little bit too abstract, that I got to sit here and I got to parse, okay, well, he could do these things, but it doesn't show up on film because he doesn't have the production of finishing plays. That is why I think I'm the most attracted to Bailey, is that there was dominance. Was he going up against offensive linemen in the Big 12 that were particularly challenging? No. Neither was it the case when he was at Stanford going up against ACC guys. I think, though, that shouldn't hold us off from being attracted to him as a prospect, because the ways that he was winning were because of his athleticism. That is where the big part for me, why I'm the most excited about him and why I'd be the most willing to take him out of any of the other edge prospects.
You know what's a little weird too is, like, you talk about like parsing out his performances against bad offensive tackles and whatnot. You felt really good about the Oregon game, though, didn't you, for a minute? Because you're like, man, he just kicked the you-know-what out of Isaiah World.
I wrote down a lot of plays from the Oregon game.
Yeah, but then unfortunately, then Isaiah World has a horrible showing against Indiana where you're just like, maybe Isaiah World just isn't very good. Like, that's unfortunate, right, for the evaluation process. But I think the big thing is, I think David Bailey's supposed to go to the Senior Bowl, I believe. So, like, if he goes to Mobile and he has a big week, and I'll double check that for a second, but I thought he was on the roster. If he ends up going there and showcasing himself, and I think he should, by the way, because I think he, again, has the most high rise potential of those top three guys in this class. If he's able to showcase that he can do it against the best competition, I think he has a great opportunity to continue to assert himself as potentially edge one in this class. And there's a reality, Joe. There's a reality that if he has a ascension that he could potentially have, and he's the number one pass rusher in this class, is there a world where he's drafted before Arvell Reese? Because Arvell is a little bit of that hybrid tweener-ish type of player, and David Bailey's for sure a pass rusher. That's where like kind of the interesting conversations can come into play if Bailey has a big draft process.
That does add like a very interesting layer to this, is because we still don't really put Arvell Reese in the discussion of the linebacker debate and the edge debate, because
can I add something to that real quick? Can I add something to that real quick? A lot of NFL teams that I've talked to probably like 6 or 7 scouts about Arvell Reese at this point for different teams, and they have him graded. Most of them have him graded as both right now. So like they have a grade for him as a linebacker and they have a grade for him as an edge. So you just need to figure out which one you value higher positionally for a player. I think there's going to be a split on it, but I mean I still think he's a linebacker. But like that's just my personal opinion. But I do think that the NFL is going to be a little bit conflicted to your point of like where exactly Arvell Reese fits in this class from a positional perspective.
All right, let's bump on over to another really highly regarded prospect in this class. Francis Mauigoa has been a super, super reliable offensive lineman for Miami. And for me right now, with a really weak offensive line class, I feel the most secure in Francis Mauigoa. I thought he had the cleanest tape. I thought he had the most impressive tape with inconsistency from Lomu and Fano and not much certainty on who falls in line after that. The question, though, now comes, as he was a right tackle at Miami, and he was a really good right tackle at Miami, does he have a better NFL career at guard? I know that we're about to do the arm length debate. I personally would be willing to play him at right tackle. We're not talking about him playing left tackle. I would be willing to keep him at right tackle. I think by trade, he does a lot of things well that stick at right tackle. I originally started grading him as a guard, and then after I did my full report, I was like, you know what? I didn't see enough of a problem that he can't move well enough to keep up with guys despite not having the absolute longest arms. If this discussion was about him playing left tackle, maybe we'd be in different territory. But I think that overall, just seeing how consistent he was in pass pro makes me believe that he would be pretty sturdy at right tackle in the NFL.
So the tackle guard debate actually doesn't come down to arm length for me with Mauigoa. It actually is like his redirection skills.
Do you have an arm length for him?
I don't. There's a bunch of rumored out there, but he's a true junior, and not all true juniors get their spring measurements, so we're going to have to wait until combine time, most likely, for that type of conversation. But I really do think that the arm length isn't the actual concern I have with Mauigoa. It's the range in his kick and the ability to change direction or redirect, which is kind of my bigger concern for him. That being said, though, I would actually be fine with the team giving him a chance to sink or swim at right tackle initially. Like I would be okay with it because I do think that he does enough technically to get by from certain deficiencies. That being said, though, Joe, I think he's the best offensive lineman in this class. And, going into the year, I wasn't a big Mauigoa fan. Like, I wasn't. I liked him, but I didn't love him. Like, it was kind of the best way I could phrase him. I think that this is a Pro Bowl guard on the NFL level. I think he could be that type of player. I think he has that type of upside to him. The hip strength that young man has, the grip strength that young man has is tremendous. When he gets inside positioning on you and he's able to get his hips underneath of him, that dude is a hard dude to get off of blocks. Like, he is a really strong, bulbous run blocker. Like, he is so powerful, and he plays with such a good, consistent base. So I think inside would actually be better for him long term. But again, I understand the value of playing guys at offensive tackle. So if a team wants to say, hey, we're going to give him a shot at right tackle, sink or swim. If not, we have a high-level guard. We have a high-floor guard at the table. I would be totally okay with it, but I do think he would be better in tighter spaces, to be honest.
It sounds like we're on the same page here in that regard, that, and I think that this is the outcome of this discussion. He could do both. It depends on a team's needs. I think that if you're a team who's drafting, looking for offensive line help, and maybe you have your tackle situation somewhat settled and you feel like you understand what you're trying to do there, you draft them to play right tackle. And then if you draft them to play guard. If you feel more secure with your interior group, you draft them to play tackle. Or if you've just got a really bad offensive line, you draft him, you see where he fits, and then you move him around. It was kind of remind me a little bit of like Taliesin Fuaga, where he was this really physical dude who was just a mauler, and we all had all these expectations that, you know, he would immediately be a player who goes to right tackle. Troy Fotanu, it was another guy. I know I'm naming a lot of Polynesian offensive linemen.
Tevin Jenkins
was another one.
Yeah,
guy that you think, oh, maybe this guy's probably better at guard, and then a team drafted him, and then he's been fine. Right tackle overall, to me, is just the one position that I'm not really going to get up in arms with length issues or overall space movement issues. I didn't think that Mauigoa was totally deficient at redirecting. Like, I thought it was maybe like a slight, not as quick as you'd like from a tackle prospect.
I think when you combine that, though, with the lack of length, I think that's where my pause comes in a little bit. Like, if he was, like let's say, I mean, this is a hyperbolic statement, but like if he had Markel Bell's arm length and he was just like a very average redirection guy, I'd be okay with it because he can play outside of his frame a little bit better. I think the fact that he probably has underwhelming length and average redirection skills is kind of where he gets in trouble a little bit, I think.
But you hit the nail on the head. I think it's a no-brainer that he's the best offensive lineman in this class. He feels like one of those kids in a year where there's really not a lot of wow players and not a lot of guys that you can take and you feel like, oh my God, he is going to be a starter for me for the next 10 years. There's so many question marks. He's one player that I think projects as that type of a Pro Bowler. He's the type of a guy that steps in and is immediately just a mauling presence, super sturdy because his hips, as you talked about, his grip strength, all that stuff is so powerful that he's impossible to get by. He can be one of these guys that we're talking about in the first half of the season is like an unbelievable rookie because it's easily translatable the way that he played at Miami to him jumping to the league.
When I was going to say he's got a great reputation in terms of in his weight room, from his preparation, his work ethic. Here's my question, though, Joe, overall. We sound like we're on similar wavelength with him. High upside as the interior, maybe get an opportunity to start at right tackle early on to see what it looks like. How high do you draft that player? There's going to be a lot of conversations with the Cardinals at 3. There's going to be a lot of conversations about it.
I was going to say you have the Giants sitting there at 5 who are going to be in this kind of cluster debate of prospects that normally probably wouldn't go 5th overall, but because of the way that the board looks, they can just do whatever the hell they want. I think this is where, as somebody who's covering the Giants for A to Z Sports right now and as a Giants fan, and now that they went and just got Harbaugh, I see that Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles, Carnell Tate, and Mauigoa are like the 4 guys that immediately pop up in my head that if you're trying to establish this early identity of being a run-first team, Mauigoa is who you go and get. They need a right tackle at the current moment. They need a damn right tackle. I would take Mauigoa 5th overall, and I think to your point, if he goes 3rd overall, I'm not blinking. If it was Spencer Fano or Caleb Lomu, I'd be like, ugh, that feels like a little bit early. But Mauigoa going that early in a normal draft class sounds crazy because he probably would have gone above somebody else who was a better prospect. But in this circumstance, it's a bad year. I think that this is a guy who's got a very high floor that would set up your franchise to succeed.
Doesn't Mauigoa feel like a traditional like Baltimore Ravens offensive lineman? And
this is why immediately
you just said the John Harbaugh thing. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. It does. Yeah,
I'm actually going to do a piece on this. I'm going to do his cut up for his film, and I'm going to do an actual piece on. I'm going to sparse it out on like these are the players that John Harbaugh would probably take in the first round. He was the first guy that I was going to do. Yeah,
no, it makes total sense. I mean, when you think of what Baltimore has valued, both at offensive tackle and guard. I mean, you can even go back to like the Kelechi Osemele days, right? The Marshall Yanda days. They have always just loved physical, just brute strength on the interior and at right tackle. Like, they have always just loved those types of players. So, yeah, I mean, if they said, hey, that's our style of player under John Harbaugh, I would not be shocked about it at all. I would not be.
All right, let's close out with the discussion here. Another player who decided to go back for Oregon creates cataclysmic effects for his position group in this class. That being Amari Washington deciding to go back to Oregon for the 2026 season. Good for the Ducks, bad for the draft class. I loved Amari Washington's tape. I thought he was, as billed, a freakish athlete who is moving really, really well for his size. He's not going to be in this year's group. Now the defensive tackle class loses a premier athlete. Caden McDonald, Christian Miller, Lee Hunter. Is
Dominic
this
Orange?
Defensive tackle class?
Dominic Orange?
Dominic
Don't forget
Orange.
about Big
I'm a
Citrus,
big
man.
Dominic Orange fan.
Yeah.
Ryan, let me ask you this question, though. Is this defensive tackle group, is it any good now that there's no Amari Washington?
I thought it was going to be a lot better. I thought it was going to be a lot better because you could even throw, I still like Peter Woods, but Peter Woods was not great in 2025. He was good at times in 2025, but he was not great in 2025. He just was not. So, Caden McDonald's having the year he has makes you feel better. Dominic Orange, I think, has just kind of been the same Dominic Orange over the last couple of years. He's a good football player. Christian Miller's a good player. You know what's the issue with this defensive tackle class, Joe? You have a lot of good nose tackles in this class, even without Amari Washington. You got a lot of good nose tackles. You mentioned Lee Hunter. You mentioned Dominic Orange. You mentioned Caden McDonald. There's a lot of good noses in this class. Who are the dominant three techniques in this class? The guys that can get after the quarterback. They don't have those types of players. So if you are a team that is in the market for a physical, run-stopping nose, I think you love the 2026 class. But if you are looking for a guy that is going to create penetration and make minuses in the backfield, which is why I still think Peter Woods is going to be valued heavily in this class because he does have that type of upside from a movement skills perspective. But there just aren't many of those guys in this class. So those penetrators, one gap type players, not a lot of them in this class. This is a big physical dense group. I still like the nose tackle class, even without Amari Washington, but you don't have the guys that are real playmakers on the interior in this year's class. It is absence of guys that are going to be able to create negatives, which is a big negative to the class. It's just, yeah. So it's not a great group for sure. It has been hit, but there is value at nose is kind of the best way that I would portray it, I suppose.
Yeah, we also forgot to mention Caleb Banks, who is a complicated conversation.
The enigma of this class?
Yeah, he could be the guy that goes... He could be a guy that goes really early, but because he was banged up and barely played this year, maybe he drops significantly behind more known commodities. Here's my biggest pulse on this. I think that this is going to be a year where we just straight up, we don't see possibly any defensive tackles go in the first round. I think that Peter Woods, Caden McDonald are the two guys that would be on the closest radar. But it feels as though we're trending towards a direction where the bulk of the class is going to go somewhere on day two. It is going to be, I believe, a really, really light year on drafting defensive tackles because the list gets pretty big. I just keep looking at this list and seeing names of prospects that I remember watching the summer that I do need to revisit, of players that were raw and all over the place. Darrell Jackson Jr., raw, inconsistent. Tim Keenan, raw, inconsistent. Xavier Harris, raw, inconsistent. DeMonte Capehart, raw, inconsistent. There's just not a lot of players that I think that are easy to latch onto and go oh, he's someone who I know is going to be just a solid starter for me.
Dude, we have been watching DeMonte Capehart for 3 years now, brother. DeMonte Capehart's film has been broken down 7 or 8 times at this point. He's still just DeMonte Capehart. I think it's a solid opinion, a solid perspective, I would say. I think there's an early day, late first to early day 2 run on defensive tackles, and then I think there's going to be a chasm until the late 3rd, 4th rounds. There's just going to be an absence of true depth in this class. I just want to revisit Caleb Banks for a second, though, Joe, because here's my question. How high and how low? So what is the ceiling and the floor of how high Caleb Banks can go in this class? Because I think that there's a world, in my opinion, where he goes somewhere top 20-ish, depending on how his process goes. And there's also a world where he goes like 48s, 50, like somewhere in that ballpark, depending on what the medicals look like and the consistency question marks that do exist. He might be the most enigmatic player in this entire class, regardless of position. Like, in terms of where is he going to go? I feel pretty good about where Caden McDonald's going to go in this class. I feel pretty decent, actually, for where, like, Peter Woods is going to go in this class. I feel pretty good about a lot of players outside of them. Like, I think I know where Jeremiah Love's going to go. I think I know about where Caleb Downs is going to go. I feel like I know a lot of where the corners are going to go, probably inside the top 15. Where does Caleb Banks go, man? He is a pure enigma in this interior defensive line class.
Yeah, that ends up being the biggest wild card, is what I just said a second ago, of does a team that maybe has somewhat of a solid defensive tackle room that they can be a little bit riskier about drafting Caleb Banks? I think that Caleb Banks, his 2024 tape was good enough to get drafted early. And I think that you could evaluate him off of that tape. I think that the fact that he barely played this year doesn't truly take away from anything. It just makes it harder to really, really grade him. A lot of people were saying, and we were both some of these people, that a jump this year could have made him a top 10 lock to be a top 10 pick. But because he didn't play enough, that jump doesn't happen. I think the more realistic, when we've got a prospect like this that was banged up, has traits, probably goes in the second round, probably goes early in the second round with not a very good defensive tackle class.
Yeah, I think I was looking at, like, you know, I've been in, like, in the top inside of the top 35 with Banks, right? Like 33, 34. I don't even know who's in that pick range right now as far as, like, who's actually picking in that spot. But, like, that's where it's kind of been, is like early 30s is kind of where I have put him. But again, that's why it's an interesting conversation, because does the demands of interior defensive line bump him up a little bit? Like, it's possible. I mean, there's a reality where Peter Woods goes in the top 20, and then we have this huge debate at the end of the first round of, like, would you rather have Caden McDonald, who's a higher floor player, or would you rather have Caleb Banks, who's a higher upside player, but his floor is a little bit scary? That's where, like, the interesting conversations in here come.
All right, buddy, do us a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We'll talk to you later.